Welcome everyone to the Apprenticeship Illinois webinar series. Today we'll be hearing from LWIA 4 from Diana Schuler on promising practices in their area. Before we dive into the presentation, just want to go over a few housekeeping notes to ensure a smooth experience for everyone. First, please note that this webinar will be recorded and posted to the Apprenticeship Illinois website later this week. I encourage you to stay on mute to minimize distractions during the presentation. If you do have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to enter them into the chat. We'll do our best to get to those before the end of the webinar. Lastly, there will be a survey after the end of the webinar, and so we'd greatly appreciate your feedback to help us improve events and let us know if today's content was helpful for you. And then just a quick overview of Apprenticeship Illinois and the role of the regional apprenticeship specialists. So DCO has a priority to have these apprenticeships specialized, create new apprenticeship programs, complete all the registration and paperwork on behalf of the program sponsors to create this simple, streamlined, and unified process for employers, really expediting the process and making it as easy for an employer to do that process as much as possible, minimize as many barriers to getting a program up and running as possible. So sometimes this is conducting in-person and virtual apprenticeship outreach through events and employer consultations in each specific area, and then receiving and pursuing the referrals received to the Apprenticeship Illinois website. So Nate Carlson usually handles the requests, and then he'll send that to the appropriate specialist in the region to follow up with the requests there made on the website online for anyone going through social media traffic. Connecting employers to intermediary partners and other services. So whether that's colleges, online training platforms, other service providers in the area, making those connections, again, as easy as possible for the employer to get up and running and to make that program go. And then collaborating with the integrated business service teams for a greater collective impact. So understanding the ecosystem that they're involved in, who's doing what, and making sure that there's not duplication of efforts, and that everyone kind of knows what's going on in a region to be as effective as possible and try to break down some of those information silos that tends to happen because we all have our certain areas of expertise. And with that, I'll hand it over to Diane.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I actually got my start in workforce development right out of graduate school in '93. So I've been around for JTPA, Welfare to Work, WIA, WIOA, 3 Navigator grants, a number of other state grants, and ready for whatever comes next. I'm the business services manager and a current navigator for the 8-county region that we serve in north central and northwest corner of the state. It includes LaSalle, Bureau, Putnam, Ogle, Lee, Whiteside, Carroll, and Joe Davies counties. So we go from the southeastmost corner of our area to East Dubuque. Galena is roughly 5,500 square miles and approximately 4 to 4.5 hour drive from one end to the other one way. So it's very large. Portions of it is extremely rural. Our region has seen a lot of change over the last 31 years. Many of our large manufacturing facilities have closed. And in at least 4 of our counties, our hospital system over the last few years has consolidated and folded into the OSF family of healthcare. While we've seen a decline in the size of manufacturing does continue to remain one of our key industries, along with agriculture, healthcare, and logistics. Advance, please. Next slide, please. So why apprenticeships? I want to start by saying we don't have an elevator speech or a pitch per se. We believe in having a conversation with the companies that we meet with and assessing what the issues are that company is facing before suggesting any solution at all. And that's part of the 25 years experience that I've had with our local business services team. And it has proven to work for us in our area. If a company identifies recruiting, hiring, skills development, and retention to be any one of those issues that they're struggling with, then we will begin to share the benefits of a registered apprenticeship program. Once I identify those issues and are open to considering it, then we go into in-depth discussion of the types of programs. And what we typically see are the hybrids, where they're both competency and time-based. The value, especially the increased retention rate and the lower costs of turnover by not incurring the cost and lost productivity of having to hire and train for the same position repeatedly, as well as providing that standardized, organized framework of training through the actual standards that are built. And then the benefits of creating that pipeline, gaining workers with customized skills. And we always stress the companies that they are trained to the company's specifications, that they are the ones that are focused on when it comes to actually writing a complete set of standards. We might give them a sample to show them what somebody else has done, but it really is driven by them and what their needs are. And then, of course, we also stress the return on investment and the retention. And the retention is actually higher in the state of Illinois than it is nationally. Nationally, the average retention rate is like 90%, so we're slightly higher than the national average. And we get a lot of interesting looks like, really? When we focus on the fact that Illinois has a higher retention rate than the national average. Next slide, please. We take a business services approach to providing meaningful employer engagement, both one-on-one and in group events. Some of the events that we have hosted ourselves, and others we've actually partnered with other entities, including having a healthcare summit and participation in partnership with the Illinois Valley Community College in Oglesby, area chambers of commerce through various groups that they regularly hold. We have one that holds Caffeinate and Connect, where we take turns focusing on a particular company, and I have done that last February 24, and we'll be doing that again next month and talking solely on apprenticeships. Our leads group, it's a business leads group where each member of the group will share information about what is a good lead, what is a good referral for that particular person. And that gives us an opportunity to really focus on not only our business services at large, but also specifically our apprenticeship development assistance. Business improvement workshops. We've had a couple of those through various chambers up in the more remote areas. And then representatives across private and public employers, economic development, hosting business workshops as well. And we actually have a podcast. It's our Workforce Boards podcast called Getting to Work. And we've utilized it a number of times to also promote not just our business services as a whole, but also registered apprenticeship programs. Some of the sectors that we've had success with in the past and are currently working with include energy and communication. During the program year 23 grant, we established 2 broadband apprenticeship programs up in the Galena area. Broadband is something that area was seriously neglected with, and setting those up for 2 different providers actually is giving their current workforce the training that they need to expand broadband into that very, very rural area. We've done a number of manufacturing for CNC, agribusiness for fertilizer technicians. We worked with the Sterling Elementary School System for program year 23 in doing a parapro to teacher, and we're expanding that this current program year, grant year, to the 4 regional offices of education within our area. Our very first program, and this was before we consolidated back in 2013, we actually did a certified medical assistant program. Unfortunately, that hospital was one of the ones that was folded into the OSF healthcare system. But that was really where we learned everything that we needed to do before there was an apprenticeship grant. Everything that went into creating a set of standards and setting up a program and working with our local community college to get the training available and approved by the community college board. Next slide, please. Programs that we have in progress. Well, actually, our very first one for this grant period was Borg Warner in Dixon for CNC operators, and it was actually signed very early in July. We are working with the 4 regional offices of education in our 8 counties to expand that parapro to teacher apprenticeship program that we started in the Sterling Elementary. They actually started training their parapros this past fall. We have an upcoming meeting next week, actually, with the ROE's statewide director. And we're looking at in-state sponsors and training providers rather than relying solely on Bloom Board as the sponsor. Bloom Board is who we worked with for the Sterling Elementary. However, in discussion with at least one individual from the Illinois State Board of Education, we kind of both felt that it was important to not exclude and to research more as to what was being offered in state. And I recalled from last year's WIA summit at Southern Illinois that McHenry University had been doing them already down in the Southern Illinois southwestern portion of the state. And then we're in discussion with Joe Davies Transit for dispatchers. And LW Schneider, which is a manufacturer in Princeton on CNC, we're still in those initial talks. That has been an ongoing discussion for quite some time, actually. Next slide, please. And this is just a very brief listing of partners that we've worked with. I mentioned earlier areas of Chamber of Commerce, economic development entities. Tomorrow, we're doing a presentation with Illinois Valley Society for Human Resource Management. Our 2 community colleges, Illinois Valley Community College in Oglesby and Sauk Valley Community College up in Dixon. The 4 regional offices of education, Illinois State Board of Education, the Illinois Department of Employment Security, and then the other mandated partners through WIOA. But also, we've worked with private industry. I mentioned the broadband earlier. That was a joint effort to address a specific need that was part of a sector strategy. How can we enhance the skill sets for not one, but multiple communications companies up in that rural area by Galena. Next slide, please. Okay, ways that we've used apprenticeship grant funds or WIA formula funds. We have historically used our WIA formula funds to support all incumbent worker training. Apprenticeships in manufacturing have been probably the most plentiful example of using incumbent worker training to fund their apprentices. Allegion is a manufacturer in Princeton. I was actually very happy to be there when their CNC apprentices completed, and Rhonda Kleiman was present to give them their DOL certificates. That's a very happy day to see something go all the way through to completion like that. Martin Engineering in Neponset, also for CNC apprentices. Karis Chemical in Peru, we have worked with them for a number of years, at least 5, in putting maintenance apprentices through training at Illinois Valley Community College and helping cover the cost of that tuition, books and fees. Joe Carroll Energy and Wolfline Construction up in Galena. Those are the 2 entities for that sector strategy for broadband technicians. And then again, Sterling Elementary. And we will continue to offer WIA incumbent worker funds to train apprentices, whether they're incumbents or new hires, as long as there's a waiver for the state and we can cover new hires, we will continue to offer incumbent worker training. Yes, challenges that we have faced. The main challenge that we have faced is that for a great many of our businesses of scale, the decision makers are not local. Getting to the decision maker is actually more than a challenge a lot of times. Unless you have a local contact who can be an ally, oftentimes where we are located, you won't reach that person who can make those decisions, and it really delays the process. So building a relationship is always the first step. Finding an ally within a company for any business service that we offer. We do continue to experience large layoffs and closures, mostly again in manufacturing. These tend to be companies, again, where decision makers are not local. And one challenge that we have faced, and we have faced this not just with apprenticeships, but with just about any grant, is time. All of us, we're a very small organization, and all of us wear very many hats, responsible for all kinds of duties outside of apprenticeship development. I'm very fortunate that we have staff that, although they don't truly function in the navigator capacity, they are out there speaking with groups and individuals about all work-based learning, including apprenticeship programs. And when they get an interest, such as the Joe Carroll Transit, they will pass that along to me to follow up. Next slide. Okay, effective approaches. Being patient. Not all programs happen quickly. Our CNC program with Borg Warner and Dixon happened very quickly. We were very fortunate that the individual that we were working with actually came from another company where he was the apprenticeship lead for their apprenticeship program. We were very lucky with that. With LW Schneider, we have been 3 years discussing and deciding how to set this up. So being patient is probably the number one thing, and having a realistic expectation, especially if that decision maker is not local, having a realistic expectation of what you can accomplish in a grant period. Focus on an actual need. our teacher shortage has given us the opportunity to have that conversation and provide a unique solution. Both of my children went through education, but to become teachers, both of them have since left. But the process is so intense and so time consuming, especially when you do live in a rural community and you're commuting an hour, hour and a half to your clinical area or your classroom area for observation or for student teaching. The teacher apprenticeship program online is something that our regional offices of education have really embraced. And then starting with those individuals you truly know and build the relationship of trust. These are the individuals who can offer you, as well as the apprenticeship model, an endorsement. Our future goals are really focused on expanding that parapro to teacher. That is our big one for this year. And then again, helping Joe Davies Transit through their process for dispatcher, and then continuing that long conversation with LW Schneider for as long as it takes until they sign on. Any questions?
Feel free to come off mute or put any questions you have in the chat for Diana.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, Lake County, I just talked to DeMar. We passed some emails back and forth concerning the parapro to teacher apprenticeship program.
Yeah, they had actually already had conversations with Bloom Board. So when I stepped into the meetings with the school, they had already selected them as a training provider. But I love that you're looking for other options, because I think across the state, we're going to see this model replicated and we need as many options as we can.
We can. And, you know, one of my things is that we have board members and we have chief elected officials, and we have all this network of individuals who, and rightfully so, have an expectation that we are giving our in-state providers at least a look and an option to make their case before going to a different provider.
Any other questions, comments for Diana while we have her on the line?
I guess this is Jen. I'll ask a question. So Diana, you've had a lot of success with these apprenticeships. I guess it's a multi-pronged question. What's the best advice you have about getting companies to yes? Because, you said there's challenges in just finding the decision makers and things of that nature. And then the other part of the question is, how can like more resources, or what would help you do a better job? Whether it's resources or
Okay, getting them
I don't know, anything. If you had a magic wand.
getting them to yes. I don't like sales. I don't like sales. I don't like a hard pitch. I don't like to be the recipient of that. So I believe that the idea has to not necessarily originate with the company, but I can give them the information And then that decision needs to be organically grown within the company that this is something we want to do instead of a hard sale. I'm not a used car salesperson. Sorry.
No, so getting to yes sounds like a hard sell, but
Yes.
what you were just saying though is getting them to yes, but in a different way. I wasn't thinking hard sell. So what do you do to get it going organically with them?
Build those relationships. It may not be the first thing that you do for them. We have had a business services team since 2020, when Greg Newton first started making the rounds, introducing the concept of a business services team, a partner business services team. And we have spent the last 25 years building those relationships. And where we are located, and I'm just going to throw a first name out there, for example, Jesse might work for ABC company, and 2 years down the road may transfer to, XYZ company. That relationship that I built while he was at ABC company may have not have provided any fruit as far as, providing them with any services, but over here at XYZ, he'll remember, and we have that relationship and we talk on a regular basis. He may be in a better position now to say, hey, my decision makers want to pursue incumbent worker training. My decision makers want to pursue that whole apprenticeship model that we talked about 2 years ago. So building those relationships and respecting the respecting the resistance, because you do get some resistance.
Yeah.
And then to answer your second, what was the second question, Jennifer?
About if you had a magic wand to make this easier, what kind of would it be? Resources that you could have, or people, or what could be done to help support your efforts?
Well, I to be honest with you, like I said, I've talked to DeMar. I've talked to Jack and Joliet. I talk to Sarah Cleveland on a regular basis. Just that informal networking amongst us, one-on-one, or in small groups outside of a specific topic, but being able to build those relationships across workforce areas with our counterparts, because many of us do wear multiple hats. I've had conversations in the past with David from the Peoria area too. So, we share information and how-tos. How did you set this up? How did you overcome this challenge? Having those opportunities and being able to reach out to one another and having that contact information is very valuable. Yeah.
I love that. I want to go back to what you were saying about building relationships. I mean, 100% agree about building relationships for business services teams. How do you build new relationships? So you've been building relationships over 25 years. Your team has. How do you
Build new ones?
go out and find new relationships to build?
Usually those new relationships come because somebody told them to call us. Or that information was passed down. We have one particular manufacturer here in Streeter, which is where I live, where the individual that I had built the relationship with worked on incumbent worker training for over 5 years, retired. Okay. But that information was passed on to his replacement. This is a person you need to get to know. If you do any training going forward, she can provide you with grant funds. So it's the quality of the relationships, but also within businesses, but also the quality of the relationships with training providers, referrals from Sauk Valley and Illinois Valley Community College, both, but also from IMEC. Building those relationships with each one of their account managers, but also their regional managers, because they will be a good referral for you as well. And once you provide one service and you establish that relationship and that, You've demonstrated that you have follow through and you have commitment. There's a tendency then to be open to the other conversations about, let's talk about your retention rate. Let's talk about your cost of turnover. What are you seeing it? Because I see who's hiring. I see what they're hiring for. And a lot of times it's the same companies over and over and over and over and over again. And also in my little community, because we are small and because most of the manufacturing does the same thing, they do tend to compete with one another for their workforce. So somebody will steal from A company and B will steal from C company. It's like, you know what? How about y'all come together and actually start training more people, like at the high school level, which was something that we had done many, many years ago to train additional welders, partnered with the community college and the high school and the three entities that stole from each other to create a training program where they didn't have to do that. They could get some new applicants, and it worked out very, very well. You see a lot over 31 years.
I bet, yeah. And you were doing sector strategies before the state picked that up, you know?
Yep.
And then, so one last question I do have, like, what kind of data do you use, or how do you know who's hiring and stuff like that? What do you look for on like a weekly basis of like data or what employers are doing, or where do you go to for your information?
And this, I don't mean to, normally I don't endorse a particular entity, whether that be a training provider or anything else. However, JobsEQ has been so valuable to us. They have, it's called RTI, it's real-time information, and it is a spider, and I get daily updates as to how many new listings are available, and I can get it right down to the zip code. So I am looking at that on a daily basis.
What did you call it? JobsEQ?
JobsEQ is a Chamura economics product.
Oh yeah.
And we've been using that. I don't know. I've found them at the very first National Association of Workforce Boards conference that I went to. So probably since 2016 or 2015. So 9 or 10 years we've been using that to get our information. They use all primary sources. The RTI is a spider program, and it's been very, very helpful.
Thank you, Diana.
Welcome.
Any last calls for questions before we wrap up today? All right. Well, thank you again so much, Diana, for taking time to present today. This will be recorded and posted online along with the slide deck. So if you need to review any of this information, it'll be up on the Apprenticeship Illinois website later this week. Stay warm, stay safe, everyone. And thank you again for joining today, and hopefully see you at the next session.